Pursuant to notice, I call up H.R. 5213, the Keep Violent Criminals Off Our Streets Act for purposes of markup. I move the committee report it favorably to the House. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 5213.
Without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. And then we'll do opening statements. Chair is recognized. H.R. 5213 prohibits the Attorney General from awarding burn jag grants to state and local governments that have cashless bail policies for violent criminal offenses and offenses that promote public disorder. States and local jurisdictions use burn jag grant dollars to fund many pretrial services that are used to assess and evaluate these offenders when they're released. Federal taxpayer dollars should not be awarded to states that have pro-criminal, anti-victim policies. Rates of violent crime have increased dramatically in Democrat-run cities over the past 5 years. Soft-on-crime prosecutors and legislators have implemented various bail policies that have resulted in more violent offenders being released back into their communities after their arrest. These laws and policies ignore public safety and create a revolving door for criminals. For example, in 2021, Illinois became the first state to eliminate the use of cash bail. Other states, such as California and New York, have modified their bail practice to significantly decrease the use of cash bail. These states continue to receive millions of taxpayer dollars in the form of burn jag grant funding, some of which is used for pretrial services. For example, in fiscal year 2024, Congress appropriated $924 million to state and local jurisdictions in this burn jag grant dollar program. Congress cannot continue to reward states and local jurisdictions that place their residents in harm's way for ideological purposes. I urge my colleagues to support the bill, and I yield back and now recognize the gentleman from Maryland, the ranking member.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I strongly oppose the bill. H.R. 5213, which I understand will be renamed the No Federal Funds for Cashless Bail Act, should really be titled the Defund the Police in Dozens of American Jurisdictions Act. That's because it would prohibit states or localities that have reformed their cash bail systems from getting any funds from the burn jag program, the cornerstone of our federal public safety grant program, which supplies millions of dollars to police departments, prosecutors, and victim advocates across America to keep our communities safe. So instead of targeting criminals, this bill actually targets law enforcement, gutting federal funds that officers and district attorneys need to combat, prosecute, and punish crime. And it targets crime victims who rely on the support that burn jag funds provide. Although this punitive, anti-local bill is hopelessly vague, it's apparently intended to punish jurisdictions that have enacted cashless bail for a set of covered offenses. And I want to be clear, Mr. Chairman, if someone awaiting trial is a danger to the community or they're a flight risk, it shouldn't matter how much money that person has, they should be detained, period. Everyone should agree on that. But there are some states and localities that have made the determination that if someone does not pose a risk, they should not lose their liberty simply because of their poverty. Half of Americans are living from paycheck to paycheck. Lots of Americans simply can't afford to put up the cash bail, even if they pose no risk to anyone else and no flight risk. And they shouldn't be forced to stay in jail simply because of the power and the financial contributions of the bail bondsman. It's up to a judge to determine whether a person can safely be released before trial and whether they can be expected to appear in court. But many jurisdictions have decided that if a person's not a danger to the community, their freedom should not depend on whether or not they can afford to post bail. Under Charles Dickens' cash bail system, wealthy defendants can effectively buy their way out of jail, while lower income people who pose no greater risk will languish behind bars indefinitely simply because they don't have the money for it. That really is out of A Tale of Two Cities. They say life is unfair, but that shouldn't be the law. That's why some states and localities have decided that reforming, in some cases eliminating cash bail, would help reduce inequity in the criminal justice system while ensuring public safety is protected. But this bill assumes Congress knows better than these communities and imposes harsh penalties on their citizens that would actually make them less safe by cutting law enforcement funding in a reprisal against them for policy reasons. Unfortunately, our colleagues want to play politics with public safety, but they're hurting the very people they say they want to protect. I urge my colleagues to join me in voting no on this gross federal overreach, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back without objections. All of the opening statements will be included in the record. The chair now introduces an amendment in the nature of the substitute. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Without objection, the amendment in the nature of substitute will be considered as read and shall be considered base text for the purpose of amendment. This amendment changes the short title of the bill to the No Federal Funds for Cashless Bail Act. As the ranking member indicated, this change is not intended in any way to alter the important purpose of the legislation. I urge support of the amendment and yield back. Who seeks recognition? The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Been called worse. Yeah.
God forbid. Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to this bill for essentially the same reasons that the ranking member did. It is an anti-law enforcement bill because it cuts the burned JAG grants. And it does so in the name of opposing cash bail. But the fact is, cashless bail. But the fact is, cashless bail or almost cashless bail policies, like in New York, have worked. No one should go to jail pre-trial because he can't put up cash. No one. A judge, in every case, should decide on the flight risk or risk of bad conduct by a defendant based on all kinds of factors, except one, that is, whether the defendant can put up cash. That factor is irrelevant. The judge should decide to hold the person in confinement until trial or to let him go, based on all the myriad of factors that you would judge. States have gone in this direction. And states that have gone in this direction, like New York, which has almost the cashless bail policy, I wish we'd go further, have the lowest crime rates in decades. We have not seen lots of defendants released on cash, released before trial, commit crimes. As I said, the factors that lead to the risk of committing a crime before trial are weighable, are knowable, and weighable by a judge. The one thing that shouldn't matter is whether you have money to buy your freedom. For this reason, I oppose this legislation and urge its defeat, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I think we're waiting for Mr. Van Drew. Does Mr. Van Drew have an amendment? Does he? Who seeks recognition? Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our ranking member. I want to follow up on a point that was made and articulated by my colleague from Florida during the prior debate, and I wonder if the chairman might engage with me in a bit of colloquy here, because as I understand it, we can find no record of an Attorney General of the United States not testifying within the year in which they were confirmed for the better part of the last quarter century. Are you aware, Mr. Chairman, you've been in Congress a long time, of an Attorney General? What was that?
I'll wait till you finish your question.
Are you aware of an Attorney General?
I don't know if
Mr. Barr, Mr. Garland?
I will tell you,
Mr.
the Attorney General is scheduled to be here. She was scheduled to be here during the whatever 43-day shutdown that you guys orchestrated, but she's now scheduled to be back in next month.
Well, it's interesting. I'll just say, the shutdown did not stop any of the other Republican chairmen within the House of Representatives from securing an appearance from the individuals who serve in the president's cabinet. Did not stop any of Attorney General Bondi's
Like
peers.
I said, she was scheduled and she's coming in
I'm
February.
going to play my time on this front because I find it to be the height of hypocrisy, having served on this committee for several years, having heard my colleagues bemoan the fact that Attorney General Garland took until September, October of 2021 to testify in front of this committee, that they cannot be bothered, that the Attorney General of the United States won't testify in front of this committee, apparently until next month, although this isn't the first time we've heard from the chairman that the Attorney General is slated to testify. And then, of course, as fate would have it, the hearing is is canceled or no longer scheduled and all the rest. So I look forward to that hearing. I hope the chairman is a man of his word and that he can commit to us that that hearing will take place and that the Attorney General of the United States will testify in front of the committee that has jurisdiction and oversight over her department. If the chairman's willing to make that commitment, is that?
Like I said, she's scheduled to be here next month. We've had the director of the FBI. I don't believe any committee had any hearings during this 43-day shutdown that you guys put together.
Most of them scheduled their oversight hearings before that. So in any event, I look forward to that hearing. I yield back the balance of my time. Or I yield to the ranking member, I'm sorry.
Thank you kindly. I wanted to say a word in response to the gentleman from California, Mr. Issa, who said, as to the terrible killing of the 37-year-old mom, Renee Good, in Minnesota, that he would reserve judgment, something obviously the president did not do, something that the director of Homeland Security did not do. He would want to see. And I appreciate the fact that he did not reject my suggestion to think about Ashley Babbitt, because there's some people who seem to think that the legitimacy of a police killing of a citizen should be based on the politics of the person who's killed, which is just outrageous and dangerous, okay? And so when Ashley Babbitt was killed, I said from the very beginning of that, there's got to be an investigation to see whether this was a lawful use of force or not. And there was an internal investigation in the Capitol Police Department that found it was a lawful use of force to defend both the officer and the members of Congress from the entering mob. And then the Department of Justice came to the exact same conclusion. Nonetheless, our colleagues and the Department of Justice took the position that there should be a $5 million payout to Ashley Babbitt's family, despite the fact that there were investigations exonerating the police officer in that case. Now what we've got is the president and the Homeland Security Department asserting peremptorily, summarily, that this was self-defense in this case, and in a way totally contrary to the evidence of our own eyes. If we're going to come to a snap judgment, then I'm with the people who are saying that was murder. If we're going to come to a snap judgment, if we're going to act like lawyers on the Judiciary Committee, then let's say, well, we will allow the investigation to continue and we'll allow there to be some just conclusions made. But nonetheless, from the standpoint of public safety, we've got to get in control of ICE. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the politicians in my state at the state level had their way, then cash bail would have been abolished in California. There was a bill to do just that. It passed our legislature and was signed into law by our governor. But then the people of California weighed in. That measure was subject to a voter referendum that appeared on the ballot, and the people of California voted overwhelmingly, 56% of the vote, to overturn the law that had been passed by our legislature and signed by the governor to abolish cash bail. Because the people of our state are tired of this decriminalization agenda that has continued to lower the consequences for crimes and to take tools out of the hands of law enforcement and to allow for early release of dangerous offenders back into our communities. I'll add, incidentally, that history repeated itself last year when the voters of our state overwhelmingly overturned a measure that lowered the consequences for retail theft and drug crimes, despite the governor and the leaders in the legislature opposing this initiative last year. The people of California passed Proposition 36 to restore reasonable penalties with an overwhelming 68% of the vote. So to the extent that it's relevant to how anyone votes on this measure, I just thought it was worth noting that even in a left-leaning state like California, an overwhelming majority of the people believes that these policies of abolishing cash bail and the other decriminalization policies that have gone with it are completely reckless. And I think that this is a common sense measure to assure and do whatever we can to assure that these sort of reckless policies are not adopted throughout the country. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand that our Republican colleagues would much rather talk about cash bail today than about the fact that an ICE agent shot and killed an American citizen in Minneapolis yesterday, because that's what happened. A masked ICE agent shot and killed Renee Nicole Good, a 37-year-old citizen, a young mother in Minneapolis. This is a tragedy, apparently a preventable tragedy, and I'm heartbroken for her family, her loved ones, and her community. But I'm also angry and heartbroken for our country. How is it possible that we are doing anything else in this committee today? I completely endorse my Democratic colleagues' calls for an investigation, for hearings, because where is the accountability? That is Congress's job. Where's the response from this committee's leadership? The White House immediately branded Renee Good, this young mother, this American citizen, as a domestic terrorist and claimed she had violently attacked ICE agents. But soon thereafter, video footage and eyewitness testimony emerged that directly contradicted the White House spin. There's eyewitness testimony that the agents gave Renee Good conflicting directives and video evidence that she tried to wave the ICE agents around her car and steer around them. That's why it's all the more egregious and demanding of both condemnation and congressional investigation that the White House's first instinct was to manipulate the facts and smear the dead woman. And why it's all the more important that Congress meet its duty to examine ICE's abuses, its lack of training, its massive overspending. The implications of this incident go far beyond the tragedy in Minneapolis. 2 days ago, we marked the 5th anniversary of January 6th, an egregious act of political violence inspired by President Trump's unlawful attempts to overturn the 2020 election, when his followers violently attacked the U.S. Capitol, gravely injuring hundreds of law enforcement officers and threatening the lives of the Vice President, members of Congress, and the staff who work here. But when congressional Republicans let the President and his allies skate, let them evade accountability for inciting political violence against our Capitol and our Constitution, they opened the door for the killing of Renee Good yesterday. They opened the door for this administration's attempts to erase history. They opened the door for this president to pardon the hundreds of convicted criminals who attacked law enforcement officers on January 6th. They opened the door for this second Trump administration to send troops to American cities and unleash armed and masked federal officers to terrorize law-abiding communities. In 5 years, we've seen this president and his allies move from urging Americans to commit violence against our government to using government agencies to commit violence against Americans, to silence anyone who questions this White House or the legality of its dangerous agenda. It is long past time for Congress to assert itself on behalf of the American people and on behalf of our Constitution. What happened yesterday in Minneapolis was wrong, but it was the inevitable result of unleashing armed and masked federal agents on American streets to create political theater. This is wrong, and if you can't see that, then you don't belong here. I yield back.
Will the gentleman let a yield just for a
I
second?
will yield to Mr. Raskin.
I just have some UC requests, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman can proceed.
One is from dream.org, one is from Bail Project about HR 5213. And
Without
then
objection, they'll be entered in the record.
and I have just have two others. These are the minority committee staff reports that I highly recommend to everybody on the committee. One is called Where Are They Now? The Perpetrators of January 6th and the Defenders of Democracy Who Stopped Them, which follows people from January 6th. And then 1 year later, assessing the public safety implications of President Trump's mass pardon of 1,600 rioters and insurrectionists.
Without objection. I believe it's the gentlelady from Washington and then the gentlelady from California. Gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I oppose this bill, but I want to go back to what happened in Minnesota, because I just think that this is so critical on so many different levels. There's new information coming out every minute. I'm tracking this very closely. I want to enter into the record an article from the Washington Post entitled, "ICE Agent Was Not in Vehicle's Path When He Fired at Driver." I also want to enter into the record an article from the New York Times that is titled, "Minnesota Officials Say They're Being Blocked from Investigating Fatal ICE Shooting."
Without objection.
And the reason I think this is very important is because we have video footage that is being shown across this country about what happened in Minnesota when Ms. Good was shot 3 times by an ICE agent as her car was being turned to move away. And we also have immediately, not days later, immediately, the Secretary of Homeland Security, who has billions of dollars at her disposal, taxpayer dollars, who has been using ICE agents to kidnap and disappear people across our cities, including US citizens, by the way, mass detention policies that have been ruled illegal by numerous judges across the country with no due process, which is what this committee is supposed to ensure that we have. And that Secretary of Homeland Security, combined with the President of the United States, within hours put out statements that were absolutely lies. And that's coming out now with all this video footage. And what happens, Mr. Chairman, what happens is we live in 2 realities. We here in Congress are living in 2 realities, where we have one reality of what's happening to the American people. Healthcare is being stolen. We're invading Venezuela without authorization from Congress. Congratulations to the Republicans in the Senate who voted for the War Powers Resolution where it passed in the Senate on Venezuela. We are seeing a reality on television of an American citizen who was sitting in her car be violently approached by an ICE agent and then turning her car away and being shot 3 times. Not once, not twice, 3 times. When you have the President and the Secretary of Homeland Security now give an alternate reality to what happened, what you do is you undermine any trust that may have existed in the United States government, because that's who's saying these lies. And when you undermine the trust, and maybe this is the proposition that my colleagues across the aisle are okay with, I don't know. But when you undermine that kind of trust in our government, in our democracy, that is when you have lawlessness. And look, this isn't the first time. January 6th happened. I was in that gallery when January 6th happened. I couldn't walk, I had a cane, I just had a knee surgery, and I was one of the last people to be let out of the gallery. And to tell me that that didn't happen, that that was not a violent insurrection incited by the President of the United States, confirmed by a special counsel that he was absolutely trying to steal that election, is not just a disservice. That's too mild of a word. It is fundamentally undermining people's faith in government. Because when I see these articles that say ICE agent was not in the vehicle's path when he fired at the driver, and that is directly contradictory to what the President of the United States has said, how can we accept anything from this government, from this administration? He wants to set up an offshore account for Venezuelan oil that we sell, and I don't know, is he going to control that account? I have no idea. But I am deeply disturbed about this killing about the lack of accountability from this committee, about the fact that members on the other side are defending this killing. And I think we have to think about the consequences to our democracy and to our judiciary system and to the trust in government. I yield back.
I think I have the gentleman from California, and then I'll come to the gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I oppose this bill, and I am going to get to it in a minute. But I ask when the fever will break over there. Please let us know. And if we can help accelerate it, let us know how. You know, a woman, a mother, a daughter was killed, you know, on the streets of Minneapolis. And, you know, the callous disregard for the life is pretty potent, coming from this administration, from Kristi Noem, and from some folks on the other side of the aisle. And maybe that's because you don't know her. You know, but I would just implore us all to consider if Miss Renee Good belonged to us, if she lived in our community, if she was a constituent in our district, if we knew her, if we worshiped with her. Think about it in those terms so that you can emote a little compassion, even if it's rented, for the fact that this woman was killed on the streets of Minneapolis. And I'm deeply alarmed that the FBI has taken over this case and has denied local law enforcement the opportunity to investigate it. But you know, Kash Patel likes to party, so while we're discussing finding a time for the Attorney General Pam Bondi, priceless, to come and be a witness before this committee, maybe we can bring back Kash Patel. Please. I want to go back to this bill, keeping violent criminals off our streets. And, you know, Tuesday was January 6th. We put, Trump put 1,500 violent criminals back on the streets, those folks that he pardoned. And some of them, before the pardon that they got, were violent criminals, okay? Here's their charges: malicious bodily injury, strangling assault on a family member, destruction of property, assault, soliciting a minor, possession of child pornography and sexual exploitation of a minor, sexual assault of a child, receipt of child pornography, aggravated sexual battery of a child under 13, DUIs, stalking, invasion of property, drug possession, rape.
Will the gentlelady yield for a quick question?
Yes.
So thank you for referencing that. It's, you know, our report is devastating and everybody on the committee should read it. You're referring to some crimes that were committed before January 6th.
That's true.
But there were also crimes committed after January 6th.
Amen, ranking member. I was getting to that.
Please do. And after the pardon, there were also those who've gone out. I mean, you know, if the roles were reversed, we bet we'd have a Willie Horton ad every night on TV.
Yes, we would. And to your point, after the pardon, these violent criminals came back on the street and committed more crimes. Let's get into it. Assault of multiple people, including a police officer, law enforcement, violating a peace order in 22 and in 25. Burglary, grand theft, possession of stolen property, breaking and entering, a felony charge of making a terroristic threat, and these are actions, these are felonious actions that happened after the pardon. So if you're talking about keeping violent criminals off the streets, I would think that you would be talking about these folks, but no. You're actually talking about poor people, and in some instances, legally innocent people who are held in jail pre-trial for no other reason than their inability to pay bail. And I want to agree with my colleague on the other side of the aisle from California that states should be in control of their criminal justice system. My colleague wanted to reference the state of California. Well, the state of California actually was investing in reforms that, you know what they did? They cut down the cost of jail time, 1.4 million jail days because of the reforms. You know what that translates into? Saving taxpayer dollars. And they saved taxpayers $100 million because of their reforms. And I just want to add, even though I know my time is up, Mr. Chair, but you know, this program you're trying to defund actually supports law enforcement. I looked up this, Burn Jag. It says it helps law enforcement, prosecution in courts, prevention and education, corrections, community corrections, drug treatment, mental health and related law enforcement, and correction programs. So you're essentially saying you want to defund law enforcement and the community-based organizations that partner with law enforcement. And you know, we had a hearing about defunding federal courts. So we cannot speak out of both sides of our mouths, Mr. Chair, which is why I oppose this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The gentlelady's expired. The gentleman,
Thank you.
Gentleman from Georgia, then the gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last
Gentleman's
word.
recognized.
Yeah, this bill, just had it up, the Keep Violent Criminals Off of Our Streets Act, flies in the face of human decency and democracy. I served as a criminal defense attorney for 27 years before I came to Congress, and during 12 of those years, I served as a magistrate court judge, and one of the things I did as a judge was to set bond for people. And so my state, the state of Georgia, allows judges to exercise judicial discretion in setting bond in many and most cases. Sometimes that's limited by Georgia law. But in cases where I could set cash bonds, I use my discretion, and other judges use their discretion based on factors like nature of the offense, a misdemeanor. Why can't a judge set a signature bond, a cashless bond? Why can't a judge set a signature bond for a misdemeanor? In fact, I would challenge any of my Republican colleagues who support this bill, 5213 HR, to cite a situation where a state court judge set bail for a dangerous offense. You can't do that. The only thing that you can do is to pass this legislation for the purpose of incarcerating more people. And you know that most of the people who fill the jails now unable to make bond are black and brown people. And you know that the people who are most unable to make a bond that has been set that is not cashless or signature bond, the ones who are most likely to not be able to make bond are black and brown people. And that is why, as you know, the jails are filled with black and brown people awaiting trial, haven't even been convicted yet, but just simply awaiting trial on minor charges because they cannot make bond. This bill would punish state and local governments for allowing their judges the discretion to set signature bonds. It would cause them to lose Burn Jag grant funding. By the way, $270 million of Burn Jag awards in 2024 to 1,489 local governments that were eligible helps these states and local governments reduce and subdue crime. But you all want to take discretion away. Why is that? Got to tie it back to what happened to Renee Good yesterday. Peaceful protests, peaceful protesters. You want them to be locked up. You don't want them to be able to get out on bond if they're charged with disturbing the peace, or some minor misdemeanor, it's an erosion of our First Amendment rights, our rights to peacefully assemble and seek redress from our government. You're trying to stifle dissent. You're in favor of shooting people, executing people on the street for minor traffic offenses. This is outrageous where our country is headed. As Donald Trump's net worth goes up $3 billion in a year, our First Amendment rights are going down and our streets are being flooded with ICE goons who are untrained and who shoot into moving vehicles. Did you see why it is against police procedure to fire into a moving vehicle? It's because that vehicle becomes a projectile itself, and it goes down the street, hits other vehicles, causes property damage, could have injured or killed human beings on the street. That's why you don't shoot into a moving vehicle. These were untrained agents, federal agents, and they have immunity from civil prosecution. And if they should be prosecuted in the state courts, it's likely that their attorneys will move to have the cases removed to federal court. And so we're setting up injustice here.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
HR 5213
Gentleman yields
is in keeping with that, and that's why I
Gentleman
oppose it, and I ask my colleagues to do the same, and with that I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to be with you from the break. I want to follow up on my colleague from Colorado who was following up on my question. You were in here for about 10 minutes, and I tried to subpoena Pam Bondi because she hasn't appeared in front of this committee. She's the only one in the cabinet who has not appeared in the House yet. And so I was told that's out of order. Before the break, you said that she'd be coming in January at a previous hearing, and now she's coming in February, which is fine. So I printed out the calendar of February, and I just figured, like, while we're here, we could just get it on our calendar. So
February 11th.
she's coming the 11th.
That's my understanding.
Perfect. Excellent. The 11th. Perfect. So, by the way, since you're on a roll, should I print out the other months so we can know when Noam is coming as well? Because the Homeland Security Secretary has always come at least once in front of Judiciary a term. So she's not going to come in February. I'll print March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October.
And all you want. We'll work on getting the appropriate cabinet officials in front of the committee. We've had the director of the FBI. We will have the Attorney General in, 4 weeks. We will do our oversight like we're supposed to do our oversight.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. I didn't expect to get that answer. I was going to go a lot longer, but you saw the calendar and you just spit out the 11th.
When Mr. Neguse asked earlier, I knew it was early February. I just didn't know which day. We've been negotiating with when we can make it work. Their schedule, our schedule, when we're in hearings, when you're not shutting down the government.
Now I know the key.
Now we know it's the 11th.
Now I know the key how to get stuff out of you. I just got to whip out a calendar and all of a sudden.
Whip out a calendar, put a yellow tie on it.
Will the gentleman yield? Perhaps we could get the gentleman's commitment not to shut down the government in February.
Did those talking points go out to all of you this morning? Like, did everyone get the same talking point this morning?
No, it's just a fact.
We're back to the government shutdown? I mean, the American people and the media have moved past that. You guys are
It was your
you guys are
government
flooding the
shutdown
zone
that
every day with
prevented
more garbage.
the appearance of the Attorney General before this committee.
Look, I can do it
So
too. Why did you
it would
take
be
the
nice to
American-
get your
why did you take
commitment not to
healthcare
do
away
that
from the
again.
American people? I can do it too. Why did you take healthcare away from the American people? You invaded Venezuela, so we stopped talking about affordability. I mean, I can do this too, guys, all day.
Mr. Moskowitz, would you yield?
No, I'll end it in.
No, I want you
chair-
to yield to me.
I'll end my moment since the chairman gave me the 11th. So.
Well, you can yield to it's your time.
Sure,
You can
since
yield
said
if you
I'll
want.
yield. I will
Okay.
yield to Ms. Crockett.
Okay, thank you so much. There's a lot of conversation about shutdown, and I'm curious to know if you can answer just a couple of questions for me. Who currently controls the Senate? Who currently controls the Senate? Answer the question.
The Republican.
Thank you. Who currently controls the House?
The Republican.
So if there
Is
is.
this the same test that the president gets when he does the?
I think it is. I think it is. The ones that he claims that he actually passes. But nevertheless, so if the government shuts down again, would it be on the Democrats or the Republicans?
the people in charge, the Republicans.
Oh, okay. I just thought that my math wasn't mathing. And then the last thing that I have for you, actually, Mr. Chairman, is there any reason that we can't get the Attorney General to come in before your January 31 deadline? Because it almost sounds like y'all are projecting that y'all are about to shut the government down, and then you will go ahead and use the excuse that we were shut down and so she couldn't get in.
We're scheduled for the 11th. She'll be here the 11th.
Oh, okay. I'll yield.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for an amendment.
Let's go to Ms. McBath first.
We have one more speaker on the bill. Okay, I think the gentlelady from Georgia, and then we'll come back to the gentlelady from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to actually talk about the bill. Okay, so this bill would actually defund the police, eliminate essential public safety resources from local communities, and actually punish crime victims for policy decisions over which they have no control. It is cynical, misguided, and it's wrong. Republican fear-mongering about bail is just one thing, but it's another to play partisan games with law enforcement, crime victims, and our safety. This administration has already eliminated and canceled hundreds of millions of dollars that support vital public safety functions and essential services for crime victims. But this bill goes further, weaponizing our nation's cornerstone crime-fighting program, the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program, also known as Byrne JAG. Law enforcement agencies across the country rely on Byrne JAG funds to fight crime. The funding reaches every state and supports every congressional district, red, blue, urban, suburban, and rural, and now that that is actually how it should be. Public safety is not partisan, as it has become here in this committee. In Georgia, Byrne JAG grants provide direct financial support to innocent victims of violent crime, including victims of sexual assault, domestic violence, and child abuse. These grants help combat elder abuse and human trafficking. They support sexual assault response teams and put the latest forensic tools in the hands of law enforcement and first responders. They fund data analysis that helps Georgia make smart, evidence-driven policy decisions around public safety, criminal justice, and victim services issues. And they support training that raises standards statewide. That is just the tip of the iceberg. I could go on and on about the many uses of Byrne JAG funding in Georgia, which is, my district, or any other state or district in this country. Public safety matters to all Americans, and there has never been a partisan litmus test for Byrne JAG support. That's how it's supposed to work, and that's how it has worked for almost 40 years. It's a model for how the federal government can support state and local communities. But this bill would disqualify jurisdictions from receiving Byrne JAG funding if they don't fall in line with Trump's partisan agenda that is not based on fact and it's not based on truth. This bill would penalize states that have modeled their pretrial detention systems based on our federal courts, which boast an arrest rate of less than 2% for individuals arrested for a new offense while on federal pretrial supervision. It would even disqualify jurisdictions where the most violent offenders are not eligible for bail, like in federal court where dangerous offenders charged with violent crimes are preemptively detained. How does any of this make sense? The American people deserve to be safe in their communities. They don't need more partisan hype. We've heard enough of the partisan hype here today already. We should be working together to support states and localities to reduce crime and hold dangerous offenders accountable. I urge my colleagues to join me in opposing H.R. 5213. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady from Texas recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So as many of you know, I not only represent Texas, but I have obviously represented well over 1,000 people in court as it relates to criminal defense cases. And so this is something that I know a little bit about, and I don't know if y'all truly understand what it is that you put into writing, which is why we shouldn't just do knee-jerk things, and we should be very thoughtful as we are crafting legislation. So some of you may or may not know that both Texas and Tennessee are pursuing constitutional amendments to allow judges to deny bail for more violent crimes. moving beyond current limits where bail can often only be denied for capital offenses, kind of like what that ICE officer committed, because usually when you execute somebody that way, you could be charged with a capital offense. And so in a state like Texas, it is already a situation where that kind of officer should be soon to be defendant, would actually then go in before a judge, that judge would arraign him, and then that judge would make an assessment. And just because you're charged with capital murder doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be denied bail, but that is such a serious offense and serious accusation that constitutionally it is one that has been historically justified as a means to hold someone without bail. And the reason that we don't hold people without bail is because we have this little nasty thing called the Constitution. And in that Constitution, it says that there is a presumption of innocence. And sometimes what happens is people are innocent. I mean, we know that y'all may not have y'all's current president. If he was incarcerated for his crimes and never got bail, he may have just been sitting there for a long time, but we know that he didn't even have to really go and spend any time in jail when he got arrested for crimes in 4 different jurisdictions, both state and federal. But nevertheless, so what we do is to make sure that a defendant is cloaked within that, we have a balancing act, because everything about the Constitution is about balance. And so if somebody has a long history where they have gone out, committed violent offenses over and over and over, then a judge has that information in front of them. And mind you, the best person to decide what you will do as it relates to bail is a judge, because the judge is able to judge every single situation and determine whether or not someone is going to be a threat to the community, because that's what it's actually supposed to be about. Bail is not supposed to be punishment. Punishment is supposed to come after the fact. Bail is supposed to be to assure that someone actually shows back up. So if they have a history of fleeing, that is something that a judge takes into consideration. If they have a long criminal history, that's something they take into consideration. If they are facing a significant amount of time, which is why when someone is accused of a capital offense, such as this ICE officer who should be facing significant crimes, then they look at the fact that maybe like in a state like Texas, if you are facing a capital offense, you are facing death or a life without possibility of parole. And so when you are balancing this, you have the ability to judge the credibility of the witnesses that are gonna come before you and testify about why that person may or may not be a threat to the community. You have the ability to make these assessments. For us to take away tools does not make sense, because we don't know every individual situation. You are taking power away from the judiciary. And so I think that that's also problematic. But let me continue on. The reason that I say that I don't think that y'all thought this out very well is because what is the meaning of substantially limits cash bail? Because when Texas and Tennessee decided to go in, they decided to limit how many people could actually get cash bail. They have decided that they want to deny even more people cash bail. So you may end up cutting off funds to Texas as well as Tennessee, because they literally are in the process of changing the Constitution to actually limit how many people qualify. So you may want to go back and read your language, or it's okay if Texas doesn't get the money because, you know, we got a surplus. So anyway, I will yield my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Unanimous consent request from the gentlelady from Georgia. Without objection. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report.
Amendment and the
Without
amendment.
objection, the amendment will be considered as read. The gentleman is recognized to explain his amendment.
I reserve a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Point of order is reserved by the gentleman from Maryland. I was looking for a napkin.
Mr. Chairman, I strongly agree, I do agree with this bill's core goal. We should be incentivizing states and cities to stop policies that let dangerous criminals go free after committing serious crimes. As a committee, we've gone around the country And we see where these problems are. We've seen when judges and magistrates and prosecutors have let people out. And, I agree with the gentleman from Georgia, that a judge should have some discretion. And if it's a very minor crime, no, we shouldn't be holding them in prison. But they were releasing people that were guilty of crimes that were violent, guilty of crimes over and over again, who were flight risks, and mothers and daughters and brothers and fathers and sisters and all were murdered. And we saw them, we met them, we heard their testimony through the tears. It's wrong and it's unfair unto law-abiding citizens. That said, this bill is too broad. It sweeps in states like New Jersey, who I'd be the first to admit has a system that lacks in some ways. But while New Jersey has sharply reduced the use of cash bail, the state has not eliminated it. And it allows judges to retain the ability to detain dangerous individuals pre-trial. The distinction matters a lot. We have to do this surgically. We have to use a scalpel and not a sledgehammer. My amendment makes a narrow common sense fix. It ensures that states or jurisdictions that employ a risk-based bail system that includes pretrial detention are not automatically stripped of burn-jag funding under this bill. Those burn-jag funds are critical. Those grants are critical. They are heavily relied upon by local law enforcement in my district and in every district throughout the United States of America. I have heard from the FOP, the PBA, the state troopers, and the list goes on. Real people doing a real job, good police officers. These are men who may not even always like what their state has done, but they should not be punished, and they want to keep their communities safe. If we cut off this funding, we make it actually harder for them, not easier for them to do their jobs and keep New Jerseyans safe. This amendment preserves the bill intent to go after jurisdictions that have truly and fully, completely abandoned public safety, while avoiding the unintended consequences for law enforcement in states that maintain at least some meaningful safeguards. I urge all members to vote yes on the adoption of this amendment, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Recognize the ranking member, and then I'll make a statement.
Mr. Chairman, this is the first I'm seeing it, and I'm wondering if the distinguished gentleman from New Jersey would yield to a few questions about it.
I will yield, yes.
As I understand it, the amendment establishes a carve-out essentially for New Jersey.
And I don't want to interrupt you right as you start. It is not just for New Jersey. This would affect some other states as well. States that do allow pretrial detention, states that do give the judge the right also clearly to do that. And in New Jersey, which happens to be my state, that right exists. It's not used often, but it is used. And I believe that's important because for states like that, I don't think that you should remove their the burn-jag funding, which is really important.
Yeah. Well, and this is why we oppose the bill, because as you're saying, the JAG funding is extremely important for all of our communities and all of our jurisdictions. When you say it's not used that often, I'm afraid I don't understand the import of that statement. As I took it, this is New Jersey's system. New Jersey has moved away from cash bail and uses a risk-based bail system in every single case. Isn't that right?
That is correct. The system that they use is one that has allowances in it, though, for those areas that I just discussed. In other words, it allows you to detain people when you should. Look, this would all be good if we had good judges and good magistrates that did their job all the time. I'm talking around the country. People have been released over and over again that should be. And in those jurisdictions where they completely...
All right, you know what, I'm going to come back to you. Let me just reclaim my time so I can at least expound a little bit of where I am on this and you can respond to it. It seems to me that we have proven well that the purpose of bail is to guarantee the appearance of the defendant at trial, to prevent flight risk, and to prevent any security risk that the person might pose to the community. In that case, whether the person is destitute and can't pay anything, or they're a multi-billionaire, or they're Jeffrey Epstein and they can put up the money easy, it should make no difference. So I don't understand why all of this fervor has been mobilized against cashless bail. That's not the issue. We should make sure that bail decisions are being based on the risks of the person to the community, or the risk that the person will hit the road and not show up in court. So I'm very drawn to the gentleman's amendment for New Jersey and any other states that might be in a similar posture, but it completely unravels the logic of the bill itself. Because the bill itself is attacking jurisdictions that have said they don't want bail to be a question of money and how wealthy you are or how poor you are. And so we're just mixing apples and oranges. You take that point off of the table and you're saying, well, yeah, we're not using wealth in any way, we're just using risk. Fine, let's do that. If we want to be imposing a federal straitjacket on all of the states to be doing something that we want them to do in this field and threatening them with a Godfather offer to cut off their JAG fund money, let's do it for making sure that they're using a risk-based system. But why are we targeting the ones who have decided that cash bail doesn't help? Yeah, so in other words, I just think the logic of your amendment is to dissolve the entire bill.
It is not, and it's clear in the way that I say it. It is focused, the bill would be focused, and I believe that was the sponsor's intent, on those jurisdictions that have been capricious and cavalier in the way they've just let out real bad folks. I don't know how else to say it, over and over again. You all were with us on many of these visits as we went around the country and actually interviewed people that had been harmed, killed, raped, beaten by individuals that had a clear history that they posed a risk and danger to the community,
Okay, just to
or
reclaim my
that
time
they
for a
were a
sec. So
flight
the
risk.
problem there is they're not paying attention to risk. The problem is not that they're failing to charge someone $50,000 or whatever. The point is they're not paying attention to risk. So how does this bill even help?
May I
the
answer
problem?
that?
Yes.
That is the point. So since they aren't paying attention to risk, and some of it doesn't enter into some of their systems at all, this bill is to ensure that risk is something that should be evaluated and considered, yet at the same time, if you have a system that is somewhat different than others, and there are numbers that are all throughout the country, that there should be room for those to still get that funding, as long as they're not, in plain English, letting bad people out over and over again. I guess you want me to yield back, right?
Yeah. Well, so
Actually, you want me to.
So you just Mr. Chairman, I really have to think about this one because,
Yeah, I hear you.
but obviously
I have thought about
I'm
it.
sympathetic to what the gentleman is saying, and jurisdictions that have gotten rid of cash bail but are using risk are doing the right thing from their perspective, and certainly a reasonable thing. But it does seem like a bit of self-pleading, because generally the bill is coming in like a sledgehammer against other jurisdictions, and that doesn't seem right. So I'm going to think about it. But thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Appreciate that 5-minute dialogue so we can think about it. The gentleman from New Jersey is a great member of this committee, does outstanding work as our chair of the Oversight Subcommittee. We appreciate that, appreciate him offering this amendment, but I think this does, frankly, as the ranking member said, kind of unravels what the bill's trying to do. So I would oppose the amendment and appreciate the thoughtfulness that it was brought forward, appreciate the discussion that took place, but I think that I actually jotted it down, completely unravels the objective of the legislation. So let's, if gentlelady from California is recognized.
This was an intriguing amendment because as I was listening to my colleague from New Jersey talk about his system, and so to be clear, you're saying that New Jersey has implemented a risk-based system that you feel works.
And to be very clear, I don't feel that it always does work as well as it should. Full disclosure, and this is, you'll find this interesting, it was a Republican governor, you know his name, Chris Christie, when this system was put in place, and it was a very popular piece of legislation when it was done in New Jersey, had many Republican and Democratic supporters, the system that we have in New Jersey, and I'll wrap this up in a second. I had a lot of serious questions. I sat on the Budget Committee where this actually went through and had some concerns, and I think we could have done more and done a little better, but I don't think it's so bad that they shouldn't get the funding. It is the police that asked me for this.
Yeah, so I'm going to cut you off because it's my minutes, but
Yes.
I like what you said because, you know, obviously nothing is pure, but it sounds like more often than not, this risk-based system works. And, you know, we actually have a system like this in the liberal haven of San Francisco and also in the liberal bastion that is Los Angeles. And to your point, these systems work as well because you are integrating conditions of release, judicial discretion, and assessment tools. But I also am confused because it does seem like it would be a carve-out just for one state, and it does seem like the antithesis of what we just debated with the 5213, keep violent criminals off the streets. And why would it just be for one state or for other localities that enjoy this so that they can get the burn JAG funding, which I think we all agree is important. And to your point, it's law enforcement that is asking.
May I answer that real quickly?
About which part?
It isn't just for one state. There would be a number of states, and it is to ensure, the bill would still ensure that the money is used properly. And that's the point.
Yeah, but I think all of us want the monies that are given to these programs to be used
But they're not. I yield back
well,
to you.
but it really does fly in the face of the underlying bill. And so what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I think most law enforcement agencies are saying, hey, why get rid of this funding? That goes to support the courts, it goes to support prosecution, it goes to support mental health with our community-based partners that we're working with to make our communities more safe. It does all of the things that if you care about safer cities and communities, you would want. And so it should be funding that all states have the opportunity and the eligibility to enjoy. I think that's what sort of boggles my mind. I certainly am not one of those people that says, give the money only to California and don't give it to New Jersey. If New Jersey has some systems that are working, that have been voted on by the people.
Real quickly, I wouldn't say that either. And I
haven't yielded to you, sir. I actually wanted to yield the rest of my time to my ranking member, and then he can probably ask you the questions. I do like your orange tie, though.
Thank you very much, the distinguished gentlelady from California. Look, first of all, the New Jersey system that was adopted by Governor Christie, the cashless bail, risk-based system adopted by Governor Christie, has been working, as I understand it. There's an interesting report from the Brennan Center for Justice on bail reform and public safety on evidence from 33 different jurisdictions. I recommend it to everybody highly to check it out. But I mean, it seems to me that you know, and back to Mr. Van Drew, if you would for 1 second, when you say a risk-based bail system, when I got to law school in the middle of the 20th century, okay, in the 1980s, we were taught that bail was all about the risk of flight and the risk to other people in the meantime. You don't want people reoffending. You don't want people disappearing. Okay, so is that the system that you mean, or did you mean something else by a risk-based bail system? Because that is what the bail system is. It's risk-based. It always has been.
That is a system I mean, still have some concerns with it on an objective level. They use an algorithm. That makes me nervous sometimes. I'm open to it. I'm all due disclosure. When that came forward at the urging of Governor Christie and others, bipartisan, in committee and on the floor, I voted for it. I voted for it to give it a chance. I just have some concerns. There are other jurisdictions where it seems to me that over and over again, as I've said before, they're letting bad people out. And
well, yeah, but that can happen under a cash
legislation
system.
To me would address
when you
that.
say they're letting bad people out, let's try to have some analytical clarity about it. That's true under cash systems and cashless systems. There are always mistakes that happen in this direction or that direction, right? So
I think it's worse under cashless systems. I do.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure whose time it is, but I'm happy to yield back, Mr.
The
Chairman.
gentlelady's time has expired. Do any other members seek recognition?
We're on the amendment.
The question occurs on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Jersey. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it and the amendment is not agreed to. A record vote is requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan. Mr. Issa. Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs votes no. Mr. McClintock. Mr. McClintock votes no. Mr. Tiffany. Mr. Tiffany votes no. Mr. Massey. Mr. Roy. Mr. Roy votes no. Mr. Fitzgerald. Mr. Klein. Mr. Gooden. Mr. Vandrew. Mr. Vandrew votes yes. Mr. Nels. Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore votes no. Mr. Kiley. Mr. Kiley votes no. Ms. Hageman. Ms. Hageman votes no. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes no. Mr. Hunt. Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry votes no. Mr. Grothman. Mr. Knott. Mr. Harris. Mr. Onder. Mr. Onder votes no. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Gill. Mr. Gill votes no. Mr. Baumgardner. Mr. Baumgardner votes no. Mr. Raskin.
Aye.
Mr. Raskin votes aye. Mr. Nadler. Ms. Lofgren. Mr. Cohen. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Swalwell. Mr. Liu. Ms. Jayapal. Mr. Correa. Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Nagoose. Ms. McBath. Ms. Ross. Ms. Ballant. Ms. Ballant votes aye. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia votes aye. Ms. Kamlager-Dove. Ms. Kamlager-Dove votes aye. Mr. Moskowitz. Mr. Goldman. Ms. Crockett. Ms. Ross votes yes. Mr. Klein votes no. I don't have him. Mr. Nadler, you're not recorded. Mr. Nadler votes aye. Mr. Schmidt? Mr. Schmidt votes no. Mr. Gooden votes no. Ms. Scanlon? Ms. Scanlon votes aye. Ms. Crockett, you're not recorded. Ms. Crockett votes yes. Mr. Knott? Mr. Knott votes no. Mr. Jordan? Mr. Jordan votes no.
Have all members voted? The clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, there are 9 ayes and 17 noes.
The noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to. The question is on the amendment, the adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute. This will be followed immediately by a vote on reporting the bill. All those in favor say aye.
Sir, I had my hand up before.
Oh, yes. The gentlelady from Vermont is recognized.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So I will be voting against the underlying bill for all the reasons that my colleagues have already explained here. I want to go back to what we were talking about before, because I keep thinking about how many constituents that I've heard from in the last 24 hours about this incident in Minnesota, and how people are feeling incredible shock and outrage. And Václav Havel, who was a Czech dissident, he talked a lot about the dangers of lying. And he said, lying can never save us from another lie. And it is horrible to watch those videos of Ms. Good being killed. It's horrible to watch how there were numerous moments when it could be de-escalated, and that didn't happen. But to me, one of the most horrifying aspects of this is that within a very short amount of time after this, you had members of this administration at the highest levels lying about what happened. And even as we've been in here, Secretary Noem has been giving a press conference, and there are things that were said that are very disturbing. She doubled down on the lie that this officer was seriously injured. She said, quote, "The officer went to the hospital. He was hit by the vehicle. He received treatment. We can see with our own eyes he was not hit by the vehicle. We can see with our own eyes that he was on scene for a very long time after the shooting." We have other folks at that press conference with Kristi Noem asking about why is it that yesterday the FBI agreed to fully cooperate with the Minnesota Bureau of Investigation, and AG Keith Ellison announced yesterday that he welcomed the opportunity to be doing an investigation side by side. And then today we hear, in fact, no from Kristi Noem, they weren't cut out. They weren't cut out of the process. They just never had jurisdiction. Well, that flies in the face of everything that was released yesterday. So I long for a time when we get back to having a president, a Secretary of Homeland Security, and an Attorney General, when these things happen, that they would say something along the lines of, an American has been killed, we are heartbroken, and we're going to get to the bottom of what happened. I long for that. And I know so many millions of Americans long for that too. We want to hear people say, this is disturbing. We are deeply concerned about the actions of this officer. And right now he will be suspended until we find out what happened. And we will do a full investigation. And that is not what we're hearing. In fact, she said, we expect, and this is a quote, we expect that all the policies and procedures of review will be exactly that he acted appropriately. Again, we can disagree about many, many things. And we do in this committee, and we should. But I would hope that as Americans, not even about members of this committee, as Americans, we would understand how dangerous it is for any president, for any cabinet member to rush in front of cameras before there has ever been any gathering of evidence. And not just give a slapdash rust assessment, but in this case, absolute falsehoods and lies about what happened, and they are continuing today. And this is why we've been talking about that today. It isn't just the fact that an American has been gunned down by an ICE agent. It is also the moral rot of the lies and the lies and the lies. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman is back. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Vote against.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. I strongly oppose H.R. 6260, which targets bail reform policies. Republicans are here to defend cash bail, for the most part, an absurd and unjust policy that has no connection to public safety. Under cash bail, criminal defendants are required to pay money for pretrial release. They've not been convicted of any crime, and a judge has deemed them eligible for release, but they can't pay up, so they sit in jail until their trial. Cash bail doesn't keep dangerous people in jail. It keeps poor people in jail. It's flooded our jails with pretrial defendants who do not pose a security risk but cannot afford bail. So bail reform is a necessary and common sense solution. Pretrial release should be determined based on safety. Judges should have a big word in it and not access to cash. We need substantive hearings, data-informed decisions, and pretrial supervision and services which keep communities safe and ensure defendants attend court hearings. That's why I worked on this issue as a Cook County Commissioner and helped advance reforms to money bail. And it's why I'm so proud that Illinois became the first state to end the use of cash bail as a condition of pretrial release. No amount of propaganda and fear-mongering by Republicans can change the facts. There's no evidence that bail reform increases violent crime. None. There is substantial evidence that cash bail fails to ensure court hearings and improve public safety. In 2 years since Illinois passed the Pretrial Fairness Act, violent and property crime have significantly decreased. There has been no significant change in the rates of people failing to appear in court or being charged with new offenses while awaiting trial. And it's especially hypocritical for Republicans to champion cash bail since it contradicts values they claim to hold. How does conditioning release on wealth protect liberty and limit government coercion? Why is it fiscally responsible to force taxpayers to fund pretrial incarceration of people who do not pose a threat to the community? How are you protecting states' rights by conditioning burn JAG funding on policy changes you want? That's why the Cato Institute and other conservative groups oppose cash bail. But Republicans pay lip service to those values and then betray them for selfish political gain. Even though it harms hundreds of thousands of working families, including many of their constituents. But it's also not surprising. This is the party that supports violent insurrection, or at least is silent about it, supports kidnapping foreign leaders, supports when federal agents kill people in communities, supports any kind of violence as long as it keeps them in power. There are many examples and evidence-based policies like bail reform that would make this country safer and fairer. Congress should support those policies, but that's not going to happen as long as Republicans are in charge. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The question is on adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute. This will be followed immediately by a vote on reporting the bill. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is adopted. The question is on favorably reporting the bill as amended. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered to be reported favorably to the House. Members will have...
Ordered vote, please, Mr. Chairman.
A recorded vote is requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan. Mr. Issa. Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs votes aye. Mr. McClintock. Mr. McClintock votes aye. Mr. Tiffany. Mr. Tiffany votes aye. Mr. Massey. Mr. Massey votes aye. Mr. Roy. Mr. Roy votes aye. Mr. Fitzgerald. Mr. Klein. Mr. Klein votes aye. Mr. Gooden. Mr. Gooden votes aye. Mr. Van Drew. Mr. Van Drew votes no. Mr. Nels. Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore votes aye. Mr. Kiley.
Aye.
Mr. Kiley votes aye. Ms. Hageman. Ms. Hageman votes aye. Ms. Lee.
Just got a note that she was coming.
Ms. Lee votes aye. Mr. Hunt.
Ranking member.
Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry votes aye. Mr. Grothman. Mr. Knott.
Aye.
Mr. Knott votes aye. Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris votes aye. Mr. Onder. Mr. Onder votes aye. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schmidt votes aye. Mr. Gill. Mr. Gill votes aye. Mr. Baumgardner. Mr. Raskin.
No.
Mr. Raskin votes no. Mr. Nadler. Ms. Lofgren. Ms. Lofgren votes no. Mr. Cohen. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Swalwell. Mr. Liu. Ms. Jayapal, Mr. Correa, Ms. Scanlon. Ms. Scanlon votes no. Mr. Neguse, Ms. McBath, Ms. Ross. Ms. Ross votes no. Ms. Ballant. Ms. Ballant votes no. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia votes no. Ms. Kamlager-Dove. Ms. Kamlager-Dove votes no. Mr. Moskowitz. Mr. Goldman. Ms. Crockett. Ms. Crockett votes no. Mr. Issa, you're not recorded. Mr. Issa votes yes. Mr. Baumgartner votes yes. Mr. Nadler? Mr. Nadler, you're not recorded. Mr. Nadler votes no. Mr. Jordan votes yes.
Are there any members who wish to vote who have not voted? The clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, there are 20 ayes and 10 noes.
The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered to be reported favorably to the House. Members will have 2 days to submit views. Without objection, the bill will be reported as a single amendment in the nature of a substitute, incorporating all adopted amendments, and staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes.